of uh, gold standard of generating evidence nowadays, it was until now, which is the clinical trials. Clinical trials can produce a high standard and I would say very strong evidence regarding the safety and efficacy. However, the clinical trials actually has some limitations when it comes to expenses. We need a lot of resources, cost a lot of money, a lot of energy, a lot of time to have a solid results. And also time consuming, especially when the clinical trial conducted for a population that has very rare conditions. And to follow up with those patients would take a while to post the results. And also one of those limitations, clinical trials usually have, I would say, homogeneous patient population, which is usually does not reflect exactly the clinical practice, the population, the clinical practice. I mean, this is apparently because the extensive inclusion and exclusion criteria that apply to those population in the clinical trial. And usually that will limit the generalizability of the results and sometimes would not answer all the questions that we have. I looked at the clinicaltrials.gov, just curious about the number of clinical trials have been conducted or registered over the past, since 2000 when the clinicaltrials.gov was established until the August 29th, 2023. And they found out that about 464,375 clinical trials has been registered. This is a huge number of clinical trials. There's a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of energy has been spent for this clinical trial. But the shocking information is only about 12% of those trials actually has posted results. In other definition, those posted, I would say a clinical trial with completed results. They reach the primary endpoint and the secondary endpoint. So this is very low percentage when it comes, taking into consideration the budget has been allocated for to conduct those studies. And we searched about the main codes for, having that lower number of clinical trials to post those results. And we found out that main code is those clinical trials cannot be able to recruit the sufficient number of population. Because there is many factors for that, and we need maybe another hour to discuss it. And when it comes to numbers, 80% of clinical trials fail to reach enrollment timelines. Not only this, but about 50% only enroll one or no patients. So there's waste now in terms of time and term of cost. So that's why it's very important to have another source that actually will act as to supplement the data we have from the clinical trials. And we now see multiple or maybe several agencies around the world actually trying to accelerate the clinical research, trying to reduce the cost of the clinical research by implementing, by accessing the real world evidence. When it comes to pharmaceutical manufacturers and also the research organizations. So all they work together to have those, the real world evidence available and try to take the advantage of real world evidence to support or to generate the evidence for particular medication or particular product in the market. So what is the real world evidence? There's many definitions in terms, there's variation in definitions in terms of setting, countries, the purpose of collecting this real world evidence, but the most common definition is any data was collected outside the clinical trial. So this is the simplest definition. The clinical data could, the data could include clinical data from the hospitals, for example, related to electronic health record data, or maybe test results, the medication-related medications information, maybe that collected from the medication orders, or maybe from the pharmacy files in different healthcare settings, and also claims database usually those collected from the health insurance, whether there was a governmental or private health insurance um, company. And also the molecular profiling, family history, and mobile health actually now is an emerging source of real-world evidence. Environmental information, patients reported information that collected from the personal health records or personal event reporting or quality of life measures, all these sorts of real-world evidence as well. And also that includes also social media and literature. But so why do you think it's important to use the real-world evidence? Generally speaking, there's some advantages. So we can summarize the advantages in maybe 3 points. First, in the real-world evidence, we have the potential to collect more data from large number of patients with different background, with different, I would say, clinical characteristics, with different disease history, and so on. And also in the real-world evidence, also provide data for the patient for longer time. That we cannot see that in clinical trial. That's actually limited with a very short time period of time. And also the results, generated from the real-world evidence, usually it's more realistic than those in the clinical trial because it was collected from the clinical practice. So that makes the result more realistic. Now, if we ask how the real-world data are involved in the regulatory framework, so regulatory actually decision-making. The current status, actually, we can see that the pre-discovery and drug discovery phases, usually, I would say gradually they use real-world evidence. And also, most commonly in the post-marketing evaluation, the real-world evidence is considered to be most of the data generated in that phase actually was generated from the real-world evidence, real-world data source. But the problem is now is when we focus in the clinical development phases, there's limited use of real-world data. That's understandable because most of the regulatory authorities actually, they are very responsible about the efficacy and safety of those medication before it gets to the patient. So there's many benefits of real-world evidence in drug development and regulatory decision-making. One is it will increase efficiency of generating evidence. Will be more evidence available. There will be, and also not only available, but also quicker available for the decision maker to take a decision about a certain medication. And also they increase the relevance. We see relevance to what? To the clinical practice. When we have more information used from the real-world evidence, actually the result will be more relevant to the clinical practice rather than what we have in the clinical trial. And also the increased access to the treatments, especially for those innovative treatment that be designated to treat patients with rare conditions. Having those real-world data will actually increase or enhance the access to those treatment. The fourth point is improved understanding of the safety. Understand that the post-marketing phase actually was, what we all know that the most data about safety after the drug been licensed, it's collected after the after medication gets to the market. But also we can get more information about safety at the early stage of clinical development as well when we have the real-world evidence. The last point, I think, is one of the most important points, is increased transparency. I think using real-world evidence would also, we're using data that is publicly available for the decision makers, and also for everyone who wants to get the information they want about the specific medication. Nowadays, we see that most of the clinical trials are actually funded by pharmaceutical companies. And apparently and logically, companies would not actually post any negative results about the medication. They only publish the positive result. But maybe using this information from real world evidence, we can we can confirm the result has been reported by those companies. Or also, um, uh, if it's positive, we see like we can investigate or assess how positive and what population can be benefit from that medication. In terms of drug pricing and reimbursement policies, so this topic itself will take a very long time to discuss actually, but here, very important to think about, nowadays when you look at any HTA agencies in their application, when the pharma company wants to submit any product or any medication for to the HTA agencies, one of the requirements is the cost effectiveness information about that drug. So, the cost that I collected from the clinical trial actually is not accurate. It doesn't reflect the clinical practice setting at all, because you see the perfect environment in clinical trial, the close monitoring for the patients, and we cannot see that actually in the practice. So usually the cost collected from the clinical trial usually is very overestimated, and at the end would not provide a very valid or good or accurate cost-effective result. And also the effectiveness, we can get the effectiveness measured from patient from different background, from different disease background for any type of outcomes that was not collected in the clinical trial, but we can also collect it from the real world evidence. So this is how important the real world evidence in drug pricing. And also, the real world evidence can help identify patient population. I think this is very important for the payers. Payers usually they look for when they have a very expensive medication, they cannot approve the medication for any type group of patients. They look for the most patient who can benefit from those medication. So these reward data can help them to take decision about what to cover and what not to cover from those population. So now, if we want to take steps forward in using real-world evidence in regulatory standards, in the regulatory decision makings, we understand that we have data available now in the hospital, we have data in the primary care centers, we have data in the community pharmacy even. And each data source has different formats, different, I would say, structure. So it's very important to share those data first with, the decision makers, and also to share it, it has to be shared with the decision makers, or also with the manufacturer themselves, who wants to develop a new medication, but they don't have the data they want. And data harmonization, as I said, is when we have different data sources, we have complex databases. So it's very important to harmonize those data, so make it more useful. One important step that we have has to be taken. It's having a very advanced analytical methods to deal with the real-world evidence. Those of you who worked in any type of real-world evidence, observation studies, retrospective, or whatever, we always have problem with some of the limitations of those data. For example, like missing data. This is just an example, and we have some statistical methods to deal with that. However, whether those data maybe not enough for the decision makers to be able to take that type of data into consideration. So it's very important to find another way to deal with the limitations in the real world data to be able to make it like more acceptable to for the decision making. The last point or last step, or maybe this is one of the most, I think, step has to be taken by any country that will be maybe a country that's interested and make the most out of the real world evidence is establishing or publishing regulatory framework. Framework is very important to have in each country. The regulatory framework has definitions about the real world evidence, how the real world evidence will be developed, how the real world evidence will be presented. And also they can provide some criteria that is important to fulfill by the real world evidence to be accepted by the regulatory authorities. So this is just an example to show you, like in different countries, availability of those documents, guidance, and frameworks to guide the decision making when they use the real world evidence in the country. So we have in China and in Taiwan and Japan and United States, of course, and Canada and Europe and United Kingdom. So I think I reached the last slide of my presentation. I hope not. Let's see. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zaid, for a very informative talk.